When we started doing the rehab here, like I said, working with Alpine Consulting and Groundhog Mining, they came down here and looked and made a plan of what we want to do. So originally, these here, our timber sets, our cribbing sets, they go back into the mid 1920s. And the original timbers down here are actually cured in a byproduct of mining here in Butte, copper, arsenic. Well, timbers, you know what? Once again, they rot, they deteriorate, they would bow because rocks from up here would fall down on top of them. So the plan was we're removing one set out at a time. And when you look at a timber set, you have the pieces that go upright. Those are called our post. When we come across the top, this is our cap. Now, as we walk in, it's kind of hard to see what ties in post and cap all the way down. Those pieces we call girts. Now, what keeps all the material off the miner's head back originally? Well, that wood we call lagging. So we took out one set and that lagging out. But before we did that, we had to remove, or I shouldn't say we, Groundhog Mining had to remove all that excess material. They did that, took out a timber set. Now we're underneath what we call that unsupported ground. So they come in and they drill the holes. And some great examples, we talked about rock bolts. This is a rebar bolt right here. So they just pin that up in there. The other thing we like to use, you can see it on the side walls here, a little bit up on the ceiling. That is actually called matting. And we're using matting to help pin any type of that rock strata, what's trying to come apart, trying to make sure that we keep all the rocks in place. So once they walk this in, putting in all the modern ground support, that's all up above the cribbing that we see here, the wood. That's all in acting as our primary. Now we want to make this look original again. So they came in and all this wood is locally sourced, dug for wood that they actually milled here on site and finish worked it down here just like what they did originally back in the day, giving you that feeling of what it actually, the original parts of the workings down here. The other cool thing is we're actually in the process able to raise these timbers. Timbers originally from the ground level up to the bottom of them were 5'6" in height because of the height of the miners back then. Well, over the years, we've gotten taller. So one of the key things is to make it more friendly because we do events down here, concerts, luncheons, any type of special events. Even had a wedding down here once. With that being said, we decided between the professor, Scott Rosenthal, hey, why don't we lift this up as high, not as high as we go, but lift it up to where that way people don't always have to bend over walking underground. So we were able to lift this up a little bit to make it more comfortable for people walking in and out for not just the tours, but any event we have. So right now, we're in about the middle of working our way towards the actual shaft here behind us. But right in the middle, we have the entrance of our tool room.
So Michael, as I shine my light back there, I'm seeing a huge barrel of some sort.
So right off the bat, this is the original tool room to the Orphan Girl 100-foot shaft station. Tool room sounds exactly what it sounds like. This is where we kept all the hoses, shovels, drills, picks, and whatnot. Even fuses were kept in that sometimes. But at the very end, this big wooden tank that you see down there, that is a giant water tank that they brought down the boards, just like in the safety posters, and assembled that down here. And that water tank holds 10,000 gallons of water. Why do we need so much water down in a wet environment? Well, there's actually 3 reasons. 1, it's potable water because people get thirsty. 2, eventually, one of the drills we had was actually called a Widowmaker because when we first started drilling down here with compressed air, we did what we call dry drilling. So we have a hole that goes through the center of our drill bit and basically to keep all the dirt out of the hole. Well, it's blowing all that dust into the miner's face, and that's called silicosis. Miner's consumption, black lung disease. Well, being a sharp-edged item, the silica, just think of taking glass and grinding it up into a fine dust. And that's sort of kind of what the miners are breathing. Sharp edge, it gets stuck in you. It starts doing a damage. Eventually enough damage, boom, boom, out goes the lights. How many people actually died because of silicosis?
I don't think we have the numbers.
We truthfully don't know. So we just say untold because originally this is not considered mine related. And it took us, roughly around 12 to 14 years to figure out what's happening with our miners. So once we figure that out, we want to stop that from happening.
Of course.
So we introduce water to the drilling process. So we have dry drilling and now the wet drilling. Wet drilling, as we're drilling that hole, it's just a bunch of dirty water coming out of the hole, getting rid of all the dust so the miners wouldn't be breathing it. And a key thing about the original drill, the Widowmaker, the person who developed it actually felt so guilty about what his drill did to people. He sourced them all and purchased them all back. So we use water for the dust control. And then last, what are the miners the most scared of down here?
Fire.
Fire. So that's used for a means of fire suppression.
All right, Michael, so it looks like we've made it down to the 100-foot level. Can you tell me a little bit about what the renovations were that just happened?
So the renovations, as you can see, came all the way up into here. And now that we're actually at the shaft, so right up above us, this shaft goes to the surface. So this is how we got in and out of the mine. So when we get to the shaft, we knew there was loose dirt here. So between, once again, Groundhog Mining and Alpine Consulting, they came up with the plan of how we're going to wrap this edge with matting to support this whole area. So we didn't have any rocks falling down into the shaft, causing any type of problems, and also allowing us to maintain the integrity of our shaft. And some of the key things you can see right behind Jeanette, in order for them to work into the shaft safely, they built a platform in here and a couple little platforms up and above. So it was allowing them to work in the shaft safely via harnesses and the equipment. So they actually had to drag their drills in there to do all this work, all the bolts, all the matting. So it was pretty labor intense for them to do this work, and they did an excellent job. So mine shafts, basically, the way we originally started going underground, just think of the pickaxe, like I was saying. Then we start just basically drilling, setting off charges, and working our way down. Originally, a miner would put the rock inside of a bucket and haul it up hand over fist. So you could literally say making money hand over fist at one point. Then we get into another piece of equipment they call a windlass. Just think of the old-fashioned water well. When someone puts a bucket into the water, they use this crank to haul the bucket back up. That's a windlass. So the miners were able to do that as well. And then we start utilizing, hey, we have a horse, mule, or donkey. So they developed something they call a horse whim. It's a vertical winch, a drum that they wrap a cable around. And that cable goes along the ground over to a pulley, up to a mini structure. Our gallows frame, head frame, goes up over another pulley and down into the mine workings via a bucket. So we're using an animal that has a board basically on top of the winch, hooks up to the animal, so as the animal walks one way or another, it'll pull the bucket in and out of the mine workings for us. And then when we get into more of the industrial, using the steel gallows frames, our first steel gallows frame came in 1890. And so we're using different types of motors depending on the size of our mines. So our mine, we used a 450 horsepower motor. And you're thinking, how are we hauling all this stuff with such a small motor? Well, primarily we're using what we call an opposing force drum. We have two drums. We have a cable that comes off the top of one drum. The other cable on the next drum comes off the bottom. So while one drum's reeling in, the other one's unreeling, acting as a counterbalance. So when we're coming underground originally, we have a steel gallows frame on for here. Our original entrance was a walk-in entrance that went down through an opening we call an adit, opening of a mine through the surface till about 75 feet. We knew where we wanted to be at, so we started digging down. So we're using the modern compressed drills, the rock drills to come down and just hauling everything up. Now, as we're coming down, we want to start supporting stuff with timbers to prevent all that stuff from coming back in on us. So as we're going down, clearing out an area, we're putting in our timber sets. So just think of a Lego set or an erector set, how you build it up to support your walls. This is what we're doing here to support the sides and also acts as a guide for our cages when they come down. All the mines are originally interconnected. So if you knew your way around in the Butte mines, you could actually enter our mine and exit a different mine later on. Now, how did we know where we're going underground originally? A compass does work underground here in Butte, and they're extremely accurate. The original company, that uses the compass via survey points. Now, survey points on the surface, you see the stakes out on the ground on construction sites. We can't do that in the mines because of all that equipment, things moving around, so they get kicked over. So the survey points are actually put up in the ceiling of the mines and typically put at every intersection of a mine. And when the Anaconda Company put these survey points in, they're being so anal, so accurate about it, they claim to be within 600ths of an inch. Are they really that accurate? Yeah, actually they are. After all this time, the original pins found by the Montana Tech students, underground survey classes, they're still within 1/4 of an inch. So that, yeah, they were extremely accurate. And then also the survey points in our mines are extremely, I shouldn't say originally, unique, because on the bottom of them, there's actually a metal hook that's bent to indicate an east and west direction. Because primarily that's the directions the veins run here in Butte once again, east and west dipping to the southeast. Now, mine temperatures can vary from mine to mine. Our mine is one of the cooler mines here in Butte. And even though we're owned by the Anaconda Company, the management here was a little bit different. So there was a waiting list for people to work at our mine. Now, the hotter mines, when you start getting towards the Stewart, the Belmont, towards that eastern side, some of those mines, there's stories of people working in an excess of 180 degrees and 100% humidity. They didn't work those spaces constantly. They actually worked those spaces for 10 minutes. They get yanked back behind a door we call a bulkhead to a cooler space where ice packs are actually put on to cool them off and rotated back in. Still not a fun day. Why do these mines get so hot? Montana is known to have all kinds of geothermal activity. So when you really look at that, why? When you take a picture in your mind, sitting to the southeast of Montana, we have that strange little park that everybody likes to visit called Yellowstone. And that's actually a super volcano. And there was actually an article put out in the paper a couple months ago talking about there's a lot of undocumented volcanoes in North America with all that geothermal activity, and people just don't realize it. But the bottom line is, Montana, we have all kinds of hot springs because of that.
We do. And one of the questions that we get on the phone all the time, or guests that are coming in, is what is the temperature while you're taking the tour? And it's about a constant 45, 50 degrees underground.
I would say you're pretty constant to about a 48 degrees underground. Yeah. And the real days working here at this mine, so the Orphan Girl Mine, between the Orphan Girl and the Orphan Boy, we employed about 150 to 175 people. And we ran 3 shifts. Basically, your day shift, your graveyard, and per diems. So the mines never shut down.
Correct.
And so per shift, we had roughly 25 people working. And we didn't work all our levels at once. We're working the levels that are producing money, bottom line is. So you go underground, it warms up naturally. 2, people working will help bring up temperatures as well, because the average person just sitting here, we put out 10,000 BTUs an hour, helping bringing temperatures up. So at actual level here back in the day, it would have been a little bit warmer because this was the main way in. We didn't have all our different entrances, ingresses, egresses back then. We had basically our side is how everything went out for both the girl and the boy. Now, we have 4 different ways. We have the orphan boy side for the college, we have the orphan girl side, and then we have the 2 shafts with manways. So we're always doing constant maintenance down here, making sure we keep everything safe and up to date. So originally, working underground here in Butte, going back into the early 1880s, you could spend up to 16 hours underground per shift back then, originally. And the miners originally did it for that whole $1.50 a day. Guys, it's good pay. It's actually roughly 3 times higher than factory workers back east at that time. When you come up out of the mine, you could come out soaking wet. And in this time frame, now you have to walk home soaking wet and possibly negatives 45, 50 below. So miners lost their life because of that. So around the turn of the century, 1900, the unions are stepping in. They step in earlier than that. And unions are very influential getting something put into place that's called the Miners' Dry. Basically, it's a large locker room that the miners can go in. They take a shower fully clothed to get contaminants off of them and their clothing. If they don't get contaminants off their clothing, if you're working in a copper mine, they can just turn your clothes into rags. Now, even following that process, miners were lucky to get 6 months out of their clothing, so it was still very tough on the clothes.
Mhm.
Once you took that shower fully clothed, you actually went into the next room that you'll see baskets and hooks. So you put your larger items on the hooks, smaller items into the baskets so they could dry. So they're drying until your next shift. So it's a heated space. Also, you have your locker. So you change from your work clothes to your street clothes. So that way, when you walked home, you're warm, bundled up, helping prevent any tragedies.
So, Michael, I'm sitting here listening to you, and I noticed this yellow ladder over here. That wasn't original to the mine. So, tell us about this yellow ladder over here.
So right off the bat, we'll look at our nice sign here. This is the manway, level above or ultimately to the surface. A manway is actually a set of ladders that went from the deepest part of the mine all the way back up to the surface, acting as an emergency escape. And also in that space, that's where they ran the utilities, the power, air, and water. So the original manways, wood ladders. Then as we advance, they actually would weld rebar together to make it a rebar ladder. Now, part of the renovation, we put in this new ladder system. So every 20 feet, there's actually a platform that if someone got tired and they were walking out, they could stop, stand, take a break, and go back up. This is a huge addition because now also being associated with Montana Tech, they can start using it as a part of their training for mine rescue and other things, just to keep people fully educated on mine safety and why we have all these protocols.
One little side note on this ladder, just because you were talking about the lumber being locally sourced and such, this ladder also has Montana connections as it was built here in Montana. Another part of the state, but it was built here in Montana. We did our best during our project, as we do with all of our projects, to keep things as local as possible in Montana, because that's the history that we're preserving and the story that we're preserving.
And one of the cool things about that history, once again, Groundhog Mining, the Hunt family, they have very strong ties, lineage that goes back forever to with Butte mining, Butte history, being the grandmother being heavily involved, Shirley, involved with the museum.
Yes.
And I was told she was quite the character as a school teacher and with her kids, making sure they did things right.
Shirley Groff, yes, exactly. She was a huge supporter of the museum, and Nathan, who was working on the project, talked about basically growing up here in at the Orphan Girl because Shirley was so involved. Her husband worked for the Anaconda Company, if I remember right, which is where some of those ties come into the hunting, and Shirley was a huge supporter. And so we did go through the whole RFP process to select the company and such. And it just happened that Nathan's bid, Groundhog's and Alpine's bid, came in as the one that fit the museum the best. And it was nice that in addition to that, Shirley or Nathan and his father, who worked on this, Delbert, have that connection here and to preserving the mine as well as that mine history. So it was nice to work on that as well. And this project was actually funded through donations throughout time and admissions and money that we had saved. The board decided that this was such a crucial project to keep this part of our museum open, because it just does really bring you back into time to feel that. And so this wasn't grant funded. This was just money over time that we dedicated the money. As you walk down this shaft station here, you'll notice the timbers with these empty walls here. One opportunity that you will have is these are up for sponsorship. Each space is up for sponsorship. If you're interested, you can give me a call. You can put your name on the Orphan Girl Mine, and you can be part of preserving that history here in Butte with your name here for our guests to see that you helped preserve this history. That connection upward will be the focus of a future episode. But before we head to the surface, we're excited to bring you something special, a two-part conversation with Matt Vinson of the Montana Mining Association. Together, we'll talk about mining in Montana today and the celebration of Montana Mining Day, which happens on February 9th. Thanks for joining us on Drifts and Tales. We're glad to have you along, and we can't wait to continue the story with you. Tapper Light.
My sweetheart's a mule in the mine. I drive her with only one line. On the backboard I sit, sweethearts behind.